also known as Pawn. I'm a 26-year-old human being from France living in the UK, and I make videos documenting my autism diagnosis journey, hoping to help others who are going through the same thing. Today I thought I'd film another update on my diagnosis. In my last update, I said I'd received my report from a psychiatrist and my insurance had approved my autism assessment, and I was just waiting to be able to make an appointment with my psychiatrist to do the actual assessment. I'm happy to say that yesterday I received an appointment date, and it made me so emotional. Like I mentioned in a previous video, I'm coming off antidepressants, so I'm a lot more emotional than usual, and like the slightest thing sends me crying, bawling my eyes out. And yesterday I was already crying because I was watching a BBC documentary, I believe, on the only school in the UK specifically for autistic girls, and that made me cry because it looked so good. Part of it is they walk dogs, and it's like considered part of the therapeutic element of it. And I just started crying because I thought, this is amazing. I wish I had something similar. Yeah, my experience at school, like a lot of people I imagine, compared to this was just awful. So anyways, that had already made me emotional, and then I received the email from my psychiatrist, and I was expecting to get my appointment in a month or two, because I had to wait a month and a half for my initial appointment. So I thought, you know, it's probably not gonna be, like, I'm probably gonna have to wait a few weeks at least. And basically, the appointment is next week. Next Wednesday on the 7th of February from 6:30 to 8:30, which is super late. So I started crying because finally having it, well, finally, I haven't waited that long, but like to have an appointment date and time that I can write down in my calendar, like it sounds really insignificant, right? But to me it means a lot. It means, you know, it's getting more and more real. It's happening so fast. I can't quite believe it. I don't know if it's the autism speaking, because I know we tend to need more time to process things, and I definitely have that. I don't remember what it's called, but I know some autistic people get stuck in like thought loops of thoughts and that's a problem I have. I've often been told that I tend to go round and round in circles in my head and like always have the same conversations. There's a YouTuber from the UK who's autistic that I watch a lot. I think her channel is called I'm Autistic Now What? I'm so bad at remembering YouTube channel names. I really love her content, and in one of her videos she said, oh yeah, I think it was her burnout story. She said that at one point after leaving school, she was kind of stuck in a thought loop of like, what I'm gonna do next with my life, my career, my job, my work, stuff like that. And she couldn't get past a certain point, and she kept having the same conversations every day with her mom, and her mom would always, you know, give her the same arguments every day, and she would still come back to the same conversations. And I've very much had that in the past. I often have that, especially about things that are very emotional, things that are hard to process, hard to unpack, like things related to my parents, my past trauma, things like that. where I can't seem to move forward in my thought process, in my thoughts. I keep coming back to the same point, and I keep having conversations about it with my partner and my in-laws, and they can get pretty impatient because, and that's the part that's difficult, is that they get frustrated because I'm always, you know, coming back to the same thing. I don't seem to make any progress in my head, and the answer seems so obvious to them, but it's not obvious to me. I hear what they're saying, I understand where they're coming from, but also they're not in my head, and just, it's the whole thing. So I really understand what this YouTuber that I mentioned meant by getting stuck in your thoughts, and it can be really overwhelming. My short-term memory and attention haven't been great lately, because I'm in a bit of a burnout. So I apologize if I lose track of things a little bit. I don't have a script or anything. Maybe I should, but I don't want to like put too much pressure on myself when I make these videos. I want to keep it spontaneous. I want to keep it in more of a vlog form. So I don't want it to be a whole thing, because that's not the intention I had creating this YouTube channel. But consequently, I might, you know, sometimes lose track of what I was saying, digress, talk about something else, and then eventually come back to what I was saying initially. So bear with me. Since getting my appointment date for my autism assessment, there's been a lot going on in my head, a lot going on emotionally. I haven't processed it yet. It's still so new, and I don't know, I can't quite believe that I only started, I know I repeat myself, but I started this whole diagnosis journey 2 months ago, and I thought it was gonna last a lot longer. Like, obviously I created this channel thinking it was gonna take a while and I was gonna document it, and here I am 2 months later, and I have my assessment appointment next week, which is insane. I might record it if I remember to do that, because last time I wanted to record my initial appointment and I completely forgot. So if I can remember, I will try to record at least parts of the assessment just for personal reference, and maybe I'll include little snippets in here in my future video, the video actually talking about my assessment, because it could be interesting and helpful for some people. Yeah, it's next week. It's gonna last 2 hours. I'm kind of nervous, I'm not gonna lie. It's weird because it's kind of like, you know, taking an exam at school, but the subject of the exam is yourself. So you kind of know all the answers already, but you still have to prepare yourself mentally, because you want to make sure that you say things in the right way, in the right order. You don't forget important things or exaggerate other things or stuff like that. So it's a little bit intimidating. Mimi! No! You can't rub yourself against it. Okay, so I've let my cat into the living room because he was meowing. So if you see the camera move or fall over, it's probably because he's been rubbing his face against my phone or the tripod. Ahead of the assessment, I've been sent an informant questionnaire that I need to fill out. So the thing is, you're supposed to have someone who knew you as a child fill this out, but obviously I don't have someone who can do that. I explained this to my psychiatrist already. Basically, we agreed that I would fill out the parts about my childhood based on my own memories, what my family has told me about how I was as a child, and my early health. Kitty, no, don't touch it. He tried to lick my sensory putty. And my early health records that I have from France. And then the rest of the questions that don't relate to my childhood, my partner is gonna answer those. So I have a week basically to fill this out, and it's a little bit daunting, and I spent the best part of yesterday filling it out. I didn't think it would take me this long, but I basically went into hyper focus mode and spent 3 hours sitting at my computer filling it out without going to the toilet, without eating or drinking until it was basically past 7 p.m. So I was quite tired and a little bit overwhelmed, because obviously this has to do with a lot of past trauma from my childhood. So it was a lot of not so pleasant things to revisit. Also, it really triggered my imposter syndrome. Here it is again. I keep coming back to it, but it's very, it will cling on to whatever it can, holding on for dear life, I thought I'd share a few of the questions because it might be of interest to you if you're getting your own autism assessment, just to know what kind of question they ask. There's quite a few. I want to say about half of them are about my childhood, and the other half are about how I am today from someone else's perspective. So that's going to be the questions that my partner answers. I had to do a lot of digging into my past to answer those questions. I had to really think about it, because some of the things that I did as a child, I want to assign a meaning to them, but I don't know if there is one. Like, I had some behavioral issues as a kid, especially in primary school. I always say like, oh, it was a cry for help. I wanted the attention, or like, I thought it would make me popular. But to be honest, I have no idea why I did these things, because I don't want to reframe all my experiences through the lens of possible autism. It may have nothing to do with autism, so I just want to be as truthful as I can. So to give you an example, basically there are several parts to the questionnaire. The first part is general information with 2 questions. So what are this person's main difficulties and how long have they been present? And why is the assessment being sought now? The next part is childhood development. Were there any problems related to pregnancy or birth? In my case, not that I know of. I'm my mother's only child, and she was 40 when she had me, and she said it went really well. I was born a couple days after my due date, so nothing really standing out here. And my first exams after I was born were all normal. What were they like as a baby? Again, nothing. Like I said, I don't have access to my parents. I don't want to ask them those questions. I don't want them involved in this in any way, so I can't have more details. I have to just go off of what I know already. And from what I remember my mom telling me, I was a pretty easy baby. I didn't cry a lot, and I was quite alert for my age. As an infant, did they show interest in people around them? So this is a kind of question that unfortunately I can't answer myself, because I don't remember. As an infant, how did they communicate to get their needs met? Example, looking, pointing, talking. Again, can't answer that, don't remember. How old were they when they sat, walked, toileted, babbled, first words, first sentences, when they talked? Were there any developmental concerns? So that's when my health records come in handy for all these things, because I had no idea. Again, I didn't seem to be either late or early in any of this. It was all normal. I walked at the age of 11 months, sat by 9 months. I was babbling by 5 months. I want to say some of the developmental concerns, if you can call them that, in my life came later on. I was a little late for other things, like, I still, as TMI, but I wet my bed way past the age that you would expect. My mom was picking out my clothes until pretty late. I was still playing pretend and like being in my own world, in my own imagination, pretty late. Like by the time that people were starting to be interested in teenage stuff, I was still very much in my childhood world and stuff like that. So that's to me what we qualify as like developmental delays of sorts, because I heard it's not only about early development, it can be later on in life as well. Obviously, if I had had early developmental concerns, I might have been diagnosed then, so it makes sense that I didn't have any because I wasn't diagnosed early. Also, I heard recently that France is the country that has the lowest number of autism diagnoses being made, which doesn't surprise me, like in the whole world. And the first one is Qatar. Next question was, did they talk in full sentences by the age of 3? Again, my health records say that by the age of 4, I could talk in full sentences, maybe earlier than that. Were there any concerns about their hearing or ears? Did they make good eye contact as a child? Has this changed? So I don't remember what my eye contact looked like as a child, but ever since I've been conscious about my own eye contact, it's never felt natural or comfortable for me. As a child, did they enjoy sharing experiences with others? What about now? So this question I don't know if I understand it. I don't know if it's a language thing, because English isn't my first language, but I'm not sure what they mean. If they mean like, did I enjoy doing things with others, or did I enjoy talking about past experiences with others? So I wasn't sure about that one. As a child, what kind of things did they like to talk about? What about now? So obviously as a child, I already had lots of like special interests that I still have today, and I liked to talk people's ears off about them. I remember one specific time when my dad and my half-sister, we were on vacation, and I talked to her about Harry Potter for hours, and she didn't care about Harry Potter, but I was trying to convince her of how cool, how amazing it is, and I kept talking about it, explaining everything about the world and the characters. And I even have a video of myself from when I was maybe, I don't know, 12, where again it was my dad and my half-sister, which makes it sound like I used to spend a lot of time with her. I didn't. I saw her maybe 3 times a year. In that video, my dad and my sister were talking together, and I kept asking like things about the horses that we were gonna each choose later on when we were gonna go on a hike with the horses. And in the background, I could hear my dad telling my sister, oh, she can't stop talking about that. She goes on and on about it, which I was like watching back. I was like, oh, that was very autistic of me. I used to talk a lot about the things that I loved, and I still do. I will still info dump on about the things I'm passionate about whenever I can. I also like to have like philosophical conversations about life. What were their interests as a child? Did they engage in these alone or with other people? So like I said, I had lots of interests, and I mostly engaged in these alone. First of all, because I was an only child, and I just doing these things on my own, I had more control over them, I think, and also they weren't necessarily things I could do with other people, like writing stories and stuff like that. I was very happy just being in my own world, in my head, doing my own thing, playing outside all the time. The only times that I liked spending time with other kids was when we could play things that I couldn't play on my own. Did they have any unusual sensory responses when they were a child? For example, disliking certain noises, textures, bright lights? So I'm not going to go too much into that because I wrote a long paragraph, but yes, I did have some sensory issues like fat in meat, grease in meat, fibrous vegetables, and runny egg whites, and the feeling of leather furniture, and like hot weather and bright lights and stuff like that. But I was also very sensory seeking as a child. I was always running around, jumping over stuff, climbing, swinging. And also I mentioned my lack of interoception when it comes to hunger, which I still have, where I'm not hungry until late in the day. So I don't have breakfast. I will force myself to eat at lunch because I know that if I don't, then I will crash later on. And then I usually have something to eat at tea time, and then I'll have a big dinner. And I did that already as a child. I would have, like, my dinner was my biggest meal of the day, and it would sustain me until the next evening, the following evening. My dislike of like bitter tasting things and my love of like savory, spicy stuff. As a child, my mom would buy those cans of tuna in tomato sauce. It sounds really gross, but it was delicious. It was the most like tangy, savory thing you can think of. Probably full of salt, and I would steal those, and I would steal bags of like savory snacks and stuff, and I would eat them in secret because I loved them so much. Did they see any clinicians or professionals during their childhood other than their GP? Did you have any concerns when they were growing up? So as I wrote, concerns were raised to my parents mostly about my behavior at school, but they decided not to take any actions. And also the health professionals in my life, like my GP, disregarded signs that I wasn't doing too well. Okay, the next category is play and friendships. So that's another part that I filled out myself. As an infant, did they appear to enjoy spending time with other children, or did they prefer to be alone? So I have a few memories of like nursery school, preschool, and I remember being mostly on my own, feeling a little lost in the playground, and apparently in nursery school, they told my mother that I would just be so, whenever they would put on a movie, I was so focused. I would stare at the screen from start to finish without losing focus, whereas the other kids would start playing together after 10 minutes. And then when I would go home, my mom said for months I would ask to watch the 101 Dalmatians every single day. Did they enjoy social games such as peekaboo? So no idea about that. Up to age of 3, what did they play with? How did they play with these things? So I had a huge collection of plushies. Like when I say a huge collection, I had a cot bed, you know, with the bars, filled to the brim with plushies for the longest time, until like I think I had that bed full of plushies until I was 18 or something like that. So mostly plushies. I don't remember how I played with them though. But later on, as an older child, I would like, they would be my imaginary friends. Well, not so imaginary because they were actual physical things, but I would imagine that they were my children or whatever, like that. I would take them everywhere. When at preschool, did they spontaneously join in with the other children, or did they need encouragement to do so? Again, I don't know. When at school, did they go to other children's parties? Did they enjoy them? I would go to children's parties sometimes. I don't remember if I enjoyed them or not. As a child, were they too quiet, or did they talk too much? So I was often told that I was very shy and quiet, and I didn't speak loudly enough. Whenever I was talking about something I loved, I would just come out of my shell and be very outgoing. And my mother would say, oh, that's why shy people do. When they start talking, they can't stop. So I always thought it's a normal thing shy people do, but it doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. Did they have friends in primary school and then in secondary school? So I wrote a whole paragraph about that. Did they have any difficulties in either making or maintaining friendships in primary school and secondary school? Did they see friends outside of school? If so, what did they do with them? The next category is school and education. So did they have any behavioral difficulties when they were young? Were there any difficult experiences they had as a child? Bullying, domestic violence, abuse, parental divorce, bereavement? So this is the kind of question that really triggers my imposter syndrome, because there was quite a lot there. I mean, I was bullied at school, I was abused at home, and we had quite a few losses in the family. The fact that I had a lot to answer for that question makes me think, oh, she's gonna read that and think, oh no, she doesn't have autism, she just has PTSD, which I know isn't the case, but I'm always scared of, you know, professionals just jumping to that conclusion. How did they do in school? Have their teachers raised any concerns? Again, yes, but my parents ignored them. How did they do academically in their education? So I never struggled academically. I have a master's degree in creative writing. Did they need any additional support in school? Please describe your knowledge of any bullying they experienced in school. So that was a little difficult for me, having to revisit all of these bullying experiences and just describe them, like having to hear all the insults that I heard, all the things that were said to me, and like having to write them down. It was a little bit overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. And then there's a whole part about social interactions, and this is more about how I am today. So this is what my partner is gonna fill out. So how good are they at joining seamlessly into a conversation? How are they able to make small talk? Are they keen to know what you have been doing? How good are they at picking up whether someone is uncomfortable or upset? Are there any times when they're too honest and or blunt in terms of what they say? How good are they at picking up on humor? Do they get confused or misunderstand what other people say or take things too literally? How good are they at picking up sarcasm? Do they use gestures to describe what they're talking about? If so, does it look unusual or awkward in any way? Have they currently got any close friends? If not, does this seem to worry them? Do you think they get taken advantage of in any way? Are there particular social situations that make them distressed? Do they have difficulties in looking after themselves and carrying out day-to-day tasks such as household tasks, paying their bills, etc.? Next category is work and daily life. Again, my partner is going to fill this one out. Have they had any jobs? Have they had any difficulties in finding or keeping work? If applicable, have they been able to live independently? Have they ever been in trouble with the police or the law? Have they got any convictions? If applicable, can they drive? If so, have they got any driving convictions? What do you see as their strengths? And then there's behaviors and interests. Is there anything unusual in the way they speak now? Are there certain kinds of objects that they like now? If so, what do they do with them? As a child, did they have to do things in a certain way or at certain times? If so, did this inconvenience the family? So not that I remember, that's something that came for me, that came with age. Now I am much more particular about the way I do things. But even if it was the case as a child, I wasn't in a family environment that would have tolerated the fact that I liked to do things a certain way, and so it wouldn't have been possible in my family anyway. So it wasn't until I got older and I was independent that I started to do things in how I wanted to do them. How did they react to changes as a child? So I have very vivid memories of whenever one of the light bulbs in my bedroom would die. I would be so distressed because my bedroom was my safe place, and it felt like when one of the light bulbs would die, it wasn't the same room anymore. It wasn't my bedroom anymore. It didn't feel safe anymore, and I couldn't feel comfortable or relax until the light bulb had been replaced. I remember that being a big source of distress for me as a child. Do they have to do things a certain way or at certain times now? Do they get anxious or annoyed if they cannot do these things in the way they want? Do they mind if plans have to be changed? Do they find it hard to deal with new places or people? Are they particular about the way their belongings are arranged? Do they find it hard to back down from an argument? I had to look this up because I wasn't sure what it meant. Do they have a particular hobby or interest now? If yes, please outline. If you answered yes, does this appear to take a lot of their time and thoughts? Do they like to collect things? If so, what do they collect? Are they bothered by certain sensations? Do they seem to be aware of pain or cold? Are they clumsy? And then the last part is family history. Is there anyone in the family who's ever had any mental health problems? And that's it. So that's the questionnaire. Quite long. And like I said, it triggered my imposter syndrome a lot, and I'm trying to remember that it's just one part, it's just one small part of the whole assessment. You know, I already talked to her for more than half an hour 2 weeks ago, and she took a lot of notes then, and then we're gonna have a 2-hour assessment where she's gonna go in depth about all of my autistic traits and stuff like that. So my diagnosis doesn't rely solely on this questionnaire. Yeah, it's a little bit overwhelming, but I still have a week to like add anything I need to add, change anything I need to change, and for my partner to fill out his own questions. But that's basically it. I'm also gonna, ahead of my assessment, I want to prepare I already have a super long document that I wrote a month or two ago about all my autistic traits, and I want to kind of rewrite it, reframe it a little bit, so that I have a reference for the assessment, because last time during my initial appointment I realized that because I tend to be very stressed in those moments, and I might forget important things that I want to say, or they might not come to mind in the moment, and so having some kind of reference could help. So I'm gonna do that and hope for the best. And like I said, I'm gonna document. I'm gonna try to record the assessment or bits of it, and then I'll make a video after that. I was told I would get a report with basically the results of the assessment within 2 days of the assessment. So basically by the end of next week I will know whether or not I'm autistic, which is crazy. You know, I thought like initially I was like, if I'm lucky, by the end of 2024 I'll have my diagnosis. Then I was like, you know what, maybe it's a bit optimistic, but it would be cool if I had my diagnosis before I turn 27, which is in April. And now I'm like, oh, I'll have my diagnosis before the GP appointment I made for my knees last week. Like it's like, I don't know, it's kind of surreal. I also watched Jubilee Middle Ground video about autism versus neurotypicals the other day, and I have some thoughts about it. I'm not going to talk too much about it now. I don't even know if I'll make a video about it. I kind of wish that an autistic YouTuber could make a video about it, because I'd be interested to hear what people think, but I didn't love it. There were definitely things I didn't like for example, why give such a strong voice to the neurotypicals when the people we need to hear about are the autistic people. And then I thought, you know, there was one of the autistic people that were invited was Abby, I think is her name, from Love on the Spectrum, and her mother. And I thought her mother talked too much, and she was very condescending and infantilizing, and she gave her opinions on stuff that are clearly like, I'm sorry, that's not her place to talk about these things. But and also the fact that all of the autistic people they invited were all diagnosed as children, and I believe there was only one female. Abby was the only female, I think, in the autistic group, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that was a little bit, I wish they had a little bit more diversity, maybe people diagnosed later in life, people of different age groups, different genders. It would have been nice. I was a little bit disappointed. I had high hopes. But anyway, I think that's all I wanted to talk about, and it's already a very long video, so I'll end it here. And probably the next time I pick up the camera will be after my assessment, which is crazy. So definitely stay tuned and subscribe if you want to hear more about the actual autism assessment and my feedback on it and stuff like that. And I'll continue to post videos about autism, even after getting my diagnosis. I have a whole list of topics I want to talk about, so I'll continue to make these little vlogs when I feel like it. One topic I want to talk about a lot is PDA. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And yeah, thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.